Joining me now, a man who has made a cottage industry out of doing Kiss tunes from the non-original era, predominantly the 80s period with his band Quarantine. It is Chris Jericho. I thought of you. Well, we brainstormed this idea together over text, Chris.
We did.
And here we go, because you had released the latest Quarantine tune, which was Love's a Deadly Weapon, which is out now. And I was like, we should do something like, instead of just having you on talk about this. And then when I told you, let's do a show where we evaluate the 3 best non-original lineup records, it just lit right up. So here we are. How difficult was this for you?
Well, it's not that bad. I mean, it's difficult, but I think the biggest thing, and I deal with this all the time whenever I talk to, longtime Kiss fans that are stuck in the 70s era, which is great, but there's a whole world of Kiss material that is just tremendous from that non-makeup era. That's what I'm going on. And I think that's one of the reasons why Quarantine has been successful, is that, we made No a top 25 Billboard hit, and Heart of Chrome, and now Love's a Deadly Weapon. And people can't believe this is Kiss because they'd never heard these songs before. And this band was on fire in the 80s with their playing and their singing and their melodies. So there's a whole treasure trove here. If you haven't really got into it, you need to. And if you are into it, there's kind of a subsect of the Kiss hardcore fanatics who are specifically about that 80s era. So it's good to kind of glorify that.
And in all honesty, and we have some of them, they're among some of our good mutual friends that are completely checked out on this era.
Hate it.
And have no idea and hate it. And that's why there's certain parties that would normally be involved in a Kiss thing that you will not be hearing from probably today or tomorrow as we do this, because they don't know it or care about it. And after Love Gun or Dynasty, they were out. So that's why it's fun to put a whole different perspective on this. And, Chris brought up a point there where he said, the 80s period, the non-makeup period. We decided for the purposes of this show that we are going with non-original. So that's all the only criteria. The bulk of it is without makeup and that time. However, it starts with The Elder. That was the first on paper lineup change. So really, obviously that was a makeup period. So that album forward is what we're dealing with. But if you focus just on the non-makeup stuff, that's up to you. But as I've been saying consistently, The Elder forward is all good, with the exception of Psycho Circus, because it was credited to the original band, even though they're only really on one song. So those are the ground rules. Chris, as the guest, you reveal your top 3 in order to start, please.
I'm going to go with number 3 is Crazy Nights. Number 2 is Animalize. And you know what I'm going to say for number 1, still my all-time favorite Kiss studio record, Charlie Benanti and Scotty and Be Damned in Revenge.
So let me take those in a row. 3 was Crazy Nights.
Yeah.
So you're in the real pop space there, the super glossy Ron Nevison synth period. And then you're going to Animalize, which is the shredding Mark St. John period.
No. Asylum. If I said Animalize, I
you said Animalize.
I meant Asylum.
Okay, so Asylum, the Kulik Car lineup for Bruce's first record, and then Revenge, which again I say this all the time, and I don't. It makes it come off like I'm dissing that record, and I'm really not. I just don't think it's that. I think it's extraordinarily overrated. That's just me, but I know most people feel the way you do. So
it all depends though, Eddie. I think a lot of it depends on when the album came out in your life. I think that's why the 70s Kiss resonates for guys that are, 5-10 years older than I am. But for me, the very first Kiss exposure that I had, besides knowing this makeup band, was for Animalize, for Heaven's on Fire, and the video for Heaven's on Fire. So all of these records came out kind of in my high school era. Like Crazy Nights came out in my senior year in the fall of 87. So that whole time frame of thinking Kiss Crazy Nights are these great memories of being a teenager. And Revenge was very influential because that's when I started going to Japan regularly. So I bought Revenge on CD with the Japanese writing and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's why I'm more locked into that era, and it means more to me because of where I was in my life.
What was the first show you saw again? What was the first Kiss show? What tour?
Kiss Animalize, March of 1985, with the opening band Dokken.
And by the way, of course, everybody knows Jericho has a podcast. And a few months ago, you did a watch through of the Animalized Live Uncensored
Yes.
concert, which is friggin' hysterical. You guys listen to that and breaking down. Like, it's great because in podcasts you can't run audio because of publishing songs and
Right.
stuff. So Chris is riding the audio level, and you're only hearing the stage raps and the stuff in between, and
Yeah.
some of the most ridiculous Kiss stage raps ever, including the crowd applause about Gene Simmons allegedly fathering illegitimate children with groupies.
Yes.
That's my favorite one on there.
And when you listen back to an audio, the illegitimate baby rap gets a huge pop, and there's a lot of screams from the females in the audience. They love
Yes.
that illegitimate baby.
Hooray for
He's never seen you
Love and
before in
Leave 'em.
his life.
That baby had the biggest tongue I'd ever seen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta go back and listen to that if you didn't hear it. It's
classic.
just, it is so sign of the times. It's unbelievable. All right. So Jericho's coming with Crazy Nights at 3, Asylum at 2, and his number 1, Revenge. And I said this on the air. So on your latest quarantine video, Love's a Deadly Weapon, you do the ultimate 80s Kiss mashup because you're wearing Paul's Revenge jacket. You're doing a song from Asylum, and you're jumping through the hoop from Heaven's on Fire, which of course is on Animalized. So you touched on all elements there.
And don't forget the intro from Kiss Exposed where Paul's having breakfast. You should have a lot of roughage in your diet. I'm a pretty rough guy.
I didn't even pick up on that until you just said it. I was trying to figure out what that
That's
was
what
about.
it is. It's all from
I haven't
Exposed.
seen Exposed in ages, man. I completely forgot about that. That's insane.
Root beer is the secret ingredient. Remember that?
Yes, now I do.
Now you're really going to get it
together.
now.
Oh my God. All right, let me give you my 3. I struggled a little bit with 2 or 3. I did not struggle with 1. But here's the order I'm going to come with. So I'm going to start at number 3 with Lick It Up.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lick It Up is
it's great.
When you go back and listen to that record, I mean, it is a great record. It is an unbelievably heavy record.
Yeah.
It's not thought of for being heavy, but Young and Wasted, Gimme More,
Not for the
Innocent is dark and heavy and is just unreal. So Lick It Up comes in at 3. A Million to One is on Lick It Up, one of my all-time favorite Kiss
Should have been a
songs.
huge single for sure. I agree.
Yeah. And number 2, I have the same number 2 as Jericho, Asylum.
Yeah.
I think Asylum of the non-makeup records is maybe the best. And the reason why I feel that way is because when you look at the 80s, Kiss swung back and forth to a lot of different things. So Crazy Nights, they went for the super poppy Bon Jovi thing. And then when they were coming off The Elder, they tried to reestablish as a heavy band. So that was the first time they kind of identified as metal with Creatures of the Night, loudest band in the world, all that stuff. Then it took a few records. When Asylum came around, I thought that record was the first record that they found their middle ground between the melody and the pop sensibilities and the heaviness. And they found that perfect Kiss rock and roll vibe. And I love Asylum. And that record has a lot of Gene and Paul singing together on it, which they didn't do that much at that point. So love that record. Love that lineup, Kulick and Carr. And my number 1 was clear runaway slam dunk, and that's Creatures of the Night, which you did not have. But Creatures, you have interesting thoughts about Creatures. I love Creatures. Most Kiss fans consider Creatures one of the 3 best Kiss records overall. One of my favorite air drum records ever. Eric Carr just monstrous on it. Songs are great. Regardless of who's actually playing on it, tremendous. I love the record. Why no Creatures for you?
Once again, like when I hear non-classic, to me that's non-makeup. I like Creatures, but I think my opinion on Creatures is similar to your opinion on Revenge. I find it slightly overrated because yes, the staples are still played live. You did a great interview with Bryan Adams talking about War Machine, which is still one of the standards of the live show. I just find the Saints and Sinners and the Killers and the Rock and Roll Hells are just kind of like real stock to me. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, I'm going to get a deluge of people yelling at me, but I just find Creatures was cool, but they really didn't kick into me until Lick It Up and then moving forward on all the way up to Revenge.
Well, this is going to be interesting as we go forward here because I'm really curious to see, like, where everybody else in the audience is going to slot things in. A lot's going to depend upon how old they are and where they came into the picture. But also, all these records look back upon, people have different feelings about them. Like, I don't know, is somebody going to come with Carnival of Souls? Is somebody going to come with something from The Elder? Is anybody going to come with the last two records they made? I don't think the last studio record was 8 years ago, probably, something
Monster.
like that, right?
That's right.
So it's been a long time since they've done a record.
It has been. I just want to say one little thing too, just talking about like No, No, No and Love's a Deadly Weapon, which we just released. Those songs are deceptively hard. And that's something that I really got into. Like the Gene songs from the 80s are kind of critically unacclaimed in a lot of ways. And Love's a Deadly Weapon, when it was first suggested by the guys to do it, I thought, nah, it's okay. All right, I'll do it. But then really delving into those songs, like it's almost proggy. The musicianship is unbelievable. The Gene's melody line in Love and in No, 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 it's different in each verse. I mean, there's a lot of intricate stuff going on in that Kiss era as well, which is something that I think a lot of people don't realize until you really get into it. So that's another reason why I really, really enjoy talking about this, because it's not just Tears Are Falling and Hide Your Heart. There's a lot of really, I mean, Bruce Kulick is still maybe the best Kiss guitar player as far as just really playing all these really great intricate parts within the song. So there's a lot to uncover here, and it'll be great to hear everybody's opinions regarding a lot of these records.
Yeah, no, it was a completely different band. It was completely different from the 70s. It's almost the tale of two different bands. But within that period of the other version of the band, all the non-original era, there's also a ton of diversity musically there.
Yes.
From Crazy Nights to Creatures to Carnival of Souls to whatever. I mean, they jumped around all over. They were really chasing the trends a little bit at that time. So it's really going to be fascinating to see where people jump in. And you're right. Some of the stuff on there, the musicianship, some of the songs. I mean, I think of, if you really listen to a song like Not for the Innocent from Lick It Up, I mean, there's Gene screams and stuff. Some of the stuff going on in the background, it's so massive.
There's a scream at the end of Love's a Deadly Weapon. It's hard. It's high. It's long. I mean, once again, I know Gene doesn't care, but he is super underrated as a musician, and he's super underrated as a singer and a songwriter as well.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing I'll say about Revenge, which I agree with, is that Revenge, Gene was checked out for a while. Everybody knows that. Kiss history has shown that. They've talked about it. I mean, he's on the records to some degree, but he was not really fully invested in Kiss for a long period of time. Revenge was the return of Gene. And if you think about it, it was also the first time, I think, ever, or second time ever, that a Gene song opened the record and was the lead single from the record with Unholy. So the one thing I do agree about with Revenge is it was definitely Gene coming back to the fold in a big way, because he brought it on that record.
Well, it was also the first time he actually looked cool as well. I'm not saying that in a demeaning way, but you go through all the looks.
You didn't think you looked cool during Asylum?
Well, I mean, that's what do they call it? The B. Arthur era of Gene, by his words. But also too, it was like he had the goatee, he had the leather, he had his hair kind of with a ponytail in the back there. It was a real great look for him. I think he finally felt comfortable being unmasked, so to speak.
Jericho, of the two records Jericho has picked, Asylum and Crazy Nights, you could debate the music all you want. You can't debate how bad the fashion was on both of those records. Asylum may be wearing more makeup than when they wore makeup. And then Crazy Nights was that surfer body glove stuff, which was, I guess, all the rage back around 88, 89, whatever that was. So,
and Paul's G-string.
Exactly. Oh, there you go. We've set the table. Jericho has got Crazy Nights at 3, Asylum at 2. His number 1 is Revenge. For me, I had a real hard time with Asylum or Lick It Up at 2 or 3. I went with Lick It Up at 3, Asylum at 2, and my number 1 is Creatures of the Night. All right, so let's hear from the audience now. Your top 3 non-original lineup Kiss records. We start with Patrick, who is in Pennsylvania, as our first caller. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, how's it going?
We're good, Patrick. Let's hear your list.
Well, I got to start off number 3 with music from The Elder.
Oh, there's the first one.
Creatures of the Night for number 2. And unfortunately, they never toured it, but Carnival of Souls, that's one of my all-time favorite Kiss albums.
Whoa, Patrick coming right out of the chute with two really, like, I like both of those records, but like I was pondering whether anyone was going to come with Elder or Carnival of Souls, and you've got it at 1 and 3.
The Elder just flows so smooth from one song to the next, I think, and then the fact that they never toured Carnival, that just makes me draws me more to that album.
They never toured Elder either, so you got a couple in there they could go out on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for the Elder, the only time you had a live performance, actual real live performance of those songs was on that old show Fridays, where they actually played 3 songs from it live. I remember trying to get home because I just started driving, trying to get home in time to see that on TV, and I tore out of my. Wait, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, they've done a couple live shows over in Europe I've seen from the Elder, where they've done I and World Without.
No, but not just TV lip syncs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not. Thank you, Patrick, for the call. Those weren't actual live performance. We mean actually playing the songs truly live, and they did that on Fridays. And it's amazing. Like, I can't remember like people in my family's birthdays, but I can remember like when the Elder came out, being at my cousin's house. It was a snowstorm, and I remembered that they were on TV, and I hauled ass. I just started driving, and I backed out of his driveway so quickly to get home to see them on Fridays that I dropped the car in a ditch of snow and I actually was like stuck in a snowbank.
I'll say a quick story about Carnival of Souls, and as people who follow my wrestling career will understand this. I was in ECW at the time in '95, the summer of '95, and a guy called Shane Douglas gave me the cassette of Carnival of Souls. Somehow he got it from someone who was in the studio. So I had that album a year before it actually came out. That's how early on it was ready. It was the summer of '95, and I don't think it came out till summer of '96 or whatever it was.
Well, yeah, that album got screwed up because that was going to be the next record with full promotion behind it if they didn't reunite. And then after they did Unplugged and reunited, that record really got shelved. Yeah. And then bootlegs of it started leaking out. So then the label just said, screw it, let's just put it out. And they just like slapped a press photo on it as the cover. And that's the only version that's existed. But it's an interesting record in Kiss history. And I don't hate it. There are things on it I do like. Yeah. I couldn't put it in the top 3, but I mean, it's pigeonholed as the Kiss grunge record. And again, I think in a lot of the 80s, they were following whether instead of leading, but I do think there's some cool stuff on it.
Yeah, the first 3 songs, Hate, Rain, and Master and Slave, are a pretty good 1, 2, 3 punch. But like you said, it was a little bit too depressing and dark. But for that era, there's definitely some great tunes on it for sure.
Chris, Patrick had the Elder. Where do you stand on the Elder?
You know, it's funny. Like, I think Elder kind of gets a beating because of where Kiss was and when it came out and kind of in history. But as an actual overall, you know, kind of a concept record, comic book record, it's actually pretty cool. And it bugs me when people bag on it because Kiss has been a comic book band from day one. They made comic books. So this was just like, I think had the full vision of what Gene was thinking of doing, some kind of a movie and a graphic novel and that sort of thing. You know, I think there's some really good songs on it. Like Under the Rose is super cool. Only You is actually really great. I think that fits on any Kiss album. So I just think it takes a pounding because people just automatically, and plus Paul never helps because he always says he doesn't like it. But I don't have a problem with it. I think there's some fun songs on it. I just think it didn't really fit who Kiss was at that time, right after Unmasked, of this pop band.
Yeah, I just think it's a very obviously it's a very different record. Again, it's a record I don't hate. It's a record I'll listen to from time to time. It's just a very different path in the Kiss world. Right. It's just this kind of anomaly that's out there, but it's kind of interesting to listen to. And one last thing, Patrick brought up the flow of the record that he likes. Patrick is gone off the phones, but I would be curious if Patrick is talking about the original release or the remaster, because for people who don't know, the Elder, when the label first heard it, they were so shocked at what it was that they took it out of sequence, and the record was not supposed to open with The Oath, but they front loaded The Oath because it was the most Kiss-like heavy song. When the record was remastered, they actually put the album in the sequence it's supposed to run in to make sense for the story. So that one is actually much better because even though tempo wise, it's not the blazing hard rock song out of the chute,
Yeah.
it fits the storyline.
But I'll tell you what,
your concept record is doomed when the label just rips the whole storyline apart and says, the hell with it, we're putting the crunchy rocker up top.
yeah, but when you open with Fanfare, Just a Boy, and Odyssey, you're asking a lot from the record company, man.
That's true. But I always thought this, and I was on the Three Sides of the Coin podcast, and we talked a little bit about this recently. I always thought about this. Fanfare, to this day, I always thought Fanfare should be what Kiss blasts through the PA before they come on stage. Like curtain down, smoke billowing, lights go down, and you crank Fanfare over the PA and then start with whatever song. I always thought that would have been a really cool intro piece and would have given a little nod to that record, which they're not going to play anything from.
Well, I agree. And also too, like on the cruise, like if they busted out like a Mr. Blackwell, and you can't breathe fire on the cruise, but Gene could do the blood spitting for that. I mean, that's just an evil, dirty tune. It's like if they busted that out, people would go nuts. I don't care what anybody says.
Bring an orchestra and play Fanfare on the ship. Safe to say, I don't think anybody in Kiss actually had anything to do with performing on Fanfare. For those that don't know The Elder, Fanfare is like a 2-minute orchestra piece that is just a grand orchestra piece that is it's not a rock thing at all. Here's Jim in Tennessee.
I think Ace was on the bassoon on that track, but that's just a rumor.
Hey, Jim, what's going on?
Hey, Chris. Good to talk to you guys.
Hey, dude.
Hey,
Cool,
before
thanks.
I get started on my top three, Chris, I need you to do me a big favor.
What's that?
Please talk Eddie into making his next top 20 after Cheap Trick, of course. I think that's where he's going. A Kiss non-makeup era top 20. We got to have that.
All right. There you go,
what-
Eddie. The request is in.
Yeah, well, I know my program director, Roger, wants me to do that too. We've been pretty Kiss heavy lately in terms of some of the themes we've done on this show, but we'll get to it at some point for sure, Jim. So today you've got a Kiss day as well. So let's hear your three.
Okay, here's number 3. Kiss Asylum, and I'm the guy that called in last week. He said I could give my favorite song, and so I'm going to give my favorite song off Asylum as well, All Night. Number 2, Hot in the Shade. Favorite song off that, Hide Your Heart. And my number 1, Kiss Crazy Nights. Favorite song, Reason to Live.
Well, there you go.
So my feelings about, and thank you, Jim, for the phone call. Appreciate it very much. My feelings about Hot in the Shade, 2 things. If there could ever be a record from that era that could be remixed, I'd love to hear Hot in the Shade remixed. It's very thin sounding. It was made in a cheap studio. I know for a fact. The drums on it, some of them are electronic drums, just not a beefy sounding record. And also I think Hot in the Shade would benefit if it was like 4 songs shorter. There's like 15 songs on that record, and 5 of them maybe not needed and not great. So I think it could be a much more concise record, and I think it would benefit from a remix. And it's interesting that he singled out Hide Your Heart, which of course is a great song. Hide Your Heart was originally going to be on Crazy Nights. And imagine Hide Your Heart with that production. I think that would have been awesome.
You know, it's interesting too, because I do agree with you with Hot in the Shade. If it was maybe, there's probably 3 or 4 songs off the top of my head I could name to take off just to make it a little more streamlined. But the thing too is with the Crazy Nights mix, you mentioned the Ron Nevison, like conversely, a song like My Way, which is something that we've discussed for quarantine. I would love to hear that song without the keyboards, where the keyboard part is put a chunky rhythm guitar in there. So I think that you could combine like because I do believe they did a remix of Hide Your Heart and Rise to It, because those are the ones that were going to be the singles. But the rest of those tunes, like you said, they're just basically kind of pumped up demos. But the production on Crazy Nights, super glossy, super poppy, and there's a lot of keyboards on that mix. So if you prefer that, that's cool. But it'd be also cool to hear more of a rockier mix on Crazy Nights as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a signature of Ron Nevison during that period. That's
Right.
exactly why people hired him. Ozzy, Hart, Kiss, whoever, they wanted to get on the radio. They wanted that. In retrospect, I talked about this the other day on the show. In retrospect, now all those artists that the reason they hired him would like to go remix the records he
Yeah,
did for them
that's right.
because they don't stand up now to what they want. But at the time, it was exactly the reason why he was getting so much work. So it's interesting that aspect of it. But I just mean with Hide Your Heart, I just think that sort of production may have suited that song and maybe
I
given it a
agree.
chance to be a hit more than the version that ended up on Hot in the Shade. But I agree, both records would be interesting if they were remixed. And My Way, that vocal is insanely high.
For anybody
Insanely high.
that really loves that era of Kiss, you can go on YouTube and there's a vocal only track of Paul singing My Way, like just his track isolated. It's so nuts, man. And I've talked to him about it before, and he said it was effortless for him to sing like that at the time. You know, just so soaring and majestic.
I've never heard that, but I do know that Nevison told me that he was trying to get him to not sing that high
Right.
at times on that record. But again, that was the thing. That's what everyone thought was what was going to get you on the radio.
And Paul could do it, so why not? You know, there's a definite time capsule of amazing rock singing on that record from Paul Stanley for sure.
And the remixes, to my point about Hot in the Shade, the songs that were remixed from that record for singles were Forever and Rise to It.
Okay, there you go. So,
and I have them. I have the promo CD singles for radio of the remixes. So that supports the thought right there that the record was lacking in the mix department, because when they put out singles from it, they felt the need to remix them. So they spent a little extra money on the two songs that they decided they were going to try to get hits with, and neither, unfortunately, really became a hit.
Forever did. Forever was their biggest
Forever
hit.
did. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Forever did. Yeah, of course.
Number 9 on the charts.
Here's Keith in Pennsylvania. Hey, Keith.
Hey guys, I knew I'd find my way into the inner circle. How's it going?
Thanks,
We're
man.
all good. We're all good. Welcome to the Nerd Zone. With all due respect to Joe Bonamassa, he calls his show Nerdville. We're the Nerd Zone, I think.
Awesome. I had a breakthrough JoJo Dylan as part of the conspiracy, so I know where you were coming from, Jericho. But here's my top 3. Number 3, I'm going to go with those crazy nights. Number 2, even though what you guys were just saying about it, Hot in the Shade has a lot of good memories for me as a kid. I had it on cassette tape. And number 1, it's probably actually my favorite Kiss album overall with any lineup, is Creatures of the Night.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing Crazy Nights pop up a lot here. Thank you, Keith, for the call. Now I know we're in the early going. It's interesting what we haven't had yet. We haven't had Animalize except for Well, no, you didn't have it, Chris. We haven't had Animalize. We haven't had
Nobody Picked Revenge except for me.
You had which is shocking.
Yeah, very much so.
Not the most recent 2 records. And remember, I did mention this the other day. If you want to go there, Unplugged is eligible because the bulk of Unplugged is without the original band. But then again, I mean, Unplugged is basically a compilation, just done in a different way. So I wouldn't necessarily use it for that reason, but it's there if you want it. Here's Jeff in Virginia. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Eddie. Hey, Chris. Really appreciate this. And Eddie, thank you for taking my call. This is by far been the hardest. I wish I was able to upload a film of how many times I've changed these three albums. But anyway, let me get to the point. I'm going to go, number 3 is going to be Crazy Night. I just, again, love the album. I know it's, some of the songs aren't, we did with Reason to Live. It got a lot of airplay, especially on MTV, and I think Turn on the Night, the one where they go back and Gene and Paul go back into the makeup. I thought that was really cool video.
No, that was Rise to It.
Like the song.
When they go, hold on, Jeff, just so you're clear. Rise to It, Hot in the Shade is with the Return to the Makeup bit.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, I always get those two confused. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. All right, and number 2, of course, I want to put this as number 1, but I have my number 1, which I reveal. I will explain why. Creatures of the Night, of course, is number 2, and I even love it more now because I thought I was up on my Kissology and Kiss history, but again, I stand corrected just from what happened, and I had no clue until your interview, Eddie, with Bryan Adams about him co-writing War Machine. Anyway,
And
of course, I
Rock
Love
and
It
Roll
Loud
Hell.
was, and Rock and Roll Hell. That's right. So gosh, I'm batting 3 here. All right. So, and then of course, number 1 would be for me. This is just sentimental because Hot in the Shade. Even though I think, of course, Forever's a great song. I know it's played to death, still is to this day on both Sirius and terrestrial radio. But it was the first tour that I actually got to see them, because I never did get to see the original lineup until 1996. So I have to put Hot in the Shade. I mean, this was really hard. I've changed it so many times, but great. Had a lot of fun. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, Chris.
All right, Jeff, thank you. I agree. I think that Hot in the Shade, I've said this many times, I think Hot in the Shade is the best tour they ever did without the original band and without makeup. I think that's the best tour. That's when they cut the really long solos. That's when they brought in older songs. That was the coolest stage. That was my
bigger
favorite
production.
non-original lineup, big
Yeah.
production, 20 songs. I think they even played, didn't they play Making Love on that tour? I mean, it was incredible, that tour. That was my favorite tour of the non-original band.
If you look at Kiss Animalized, and it's probably my favorite gig of all time, but 11 out of those 15 songs came from Creatures, Look It Up, and Animalize. And they kind of kept that going until Hot in the Shade, where they brought back, I mean, they opened with I Stole Your Love, and they were doing Making Love, like you said, maybe even I Want You, and all these other tunes. So that's when they kind of embraced old Kiss and new Kiss for the first time since, the Animalized tour. So, and the production with with Leon the Sphinx and all that sort of stuff. Great, actually a great gig for sure.
I know the look without the makeup, we feel finally came really together with Revenge, but I thought it came together to some degree around that time too. Yeah. Where everybody started to feel a little more comfortable in their skin without makeup.
Paul always did, but that's when even Gene, he's wearing leather jacket again, and his hair was a little bit more natural. And you could tell that they had gone through all the phases. And at that point, I think Paul was playing a Les Paul again. This is real geeky Kiss talk, so bear with us, guys. But he dropped the Iceman and on the Ibanez and went for a Les Paul, and it just was more old school Kiss for sure.
One of my favorite quick stories from that tour is they had an offstage keyboard player on that tour. They had him on a few tours back then, and his name is Gary Corbett. I know him, and he would sing and play some keys and also trigger samples in the show or whatever. And during God of Thunder, the Sphinx used to I am the Lord. He used to mouth that.
Yeah.
The Sphinx would talk with like a laser in his mouth and do that. And Gary used to trigger that sample of the Sphinx doing that voice. And one time something went off with the sampling, and the Sphinx went off doing the God of Thunder thing in the middle of Forever. So here's the big cigarette lighter romantic song, and the Sphinx went off and started going, I am the Lord.
It's forever.
And then my other favorite story of that era in terms of touring is Gary also told me on the Crazy Nights tour, which he also did, they did a show in Italy or something, and it was a live TV broadcast of the concert. And, Gary was off stage, and nobody told one of the camera guys on the crew, didn't get the memo that he's to be heard and not seen. And they cut to him and had a camera on him and shot him. The one time Kiss appeared as a 5-piece with a keyboard player, and Gary's mugging to the camera and just going for it. Like, oh, who cares? Wasn't his fault. I thought that was hysterical. Here's John in New York. Hey, John.
Hey, Eddie, here's my 3 albums. Number 3, The Elder. I love concept albums, and I think the album deserves so much better recognition. And number 2, Creatures of the Night. I would have think that it would have been a even more better album if Ace was on it. And number 1, because it was my very first Kiss album that I ever bought, and it was the first time that I really got into Kiss, Lick It Up.
Lick It Up, the first person we had with Lick It Up besides myself, which is somewhat surprising. Thank you, John, for that. And shocking showing early on from The Elder, Chris.
I would bet that guy's probably more of a 70s Kiss fan, because you look what he chose. They're in sequence of the 3 kind of, Elder, Creatures, Lick It Up. I still can't believe no one has chosen Revenge yet. This is blowing my mind.
We've got more elders than Revenge. Who only my audience
never expected that.
Only my audience would do that.
Jeez Louise, you guys probably bought the Elder book where it tells the story of the guy whose hand is on the front cover.
I did.
Oh,
I read
so did
every
I.
word of it.
So
Julian
did
Gill. I read every word of it. How they went to the store, the art store, and made the door and all that. Yeah, it was like
Art-
500 pages. I read every note.
Art Schlosky from Middletown, New Jersey. Yeah, I sold him the doll, and my hand ended up on the cover.
Here's John in Georgia. Hey, John.
You guys are cracking me up. My favorite spot from Hot in the Shade tour was on Forever when he goes, every time this song goes off, it lights up like a damn Christmas tree.
Alive 3, yeah.
Exactly. Alive 3, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so listen, I think the funnest part about this was I was able to go back and listen to all the albums. I grew up, loving them since I was 4 in 77. The first concert I saw was Radio City in 83 for Lick It Up. And I loved, I'm with you, Eddie. Hot in the Shade, I think, was the best tour of the non-makeup era. And the coolest part of going through them was actually being able to pick out all those songs. You hear Paul and Gene singing together. You're like, wow, I forgot they used to do that.
Yeah.
Together, which was really cool. But when I grew up, it was all about what are you guys not going to do to make me feel ridiculed for loving you? Because you remember we were all kind of ostracized unless you were around people that were Kiss fans. It was, oh, you like that band? So when we waited those extra years for Nevison to come out with Crazy Nights, and then it came out, and I heard that first signal, my heart sunk. I'm like, no, I wanted you to be cool just for once. That is just
Crazy Nights was a huge hit in Europe, though, like a bona fide chart hit, like a huge song there. Hey, John, I'm pressed for time, so get your list in so I don't have to cut you off.
Yeah, so 3 for Asylum. I had to steal change from the mall Short Hills Fountain in order to pay for the tax on that record. Number 2, Creatures. I could do without Keep Me Coming and the Cheese songs like that, but that album is just rock solid all the way through. And Lick It Up. It's a solid rock album. There's no tongue in cheek. It's just great from beginning to end. And I appreciate your time, guys. Have a great day.
So John, real quick, you had Lick It Up at 1, Creatures at 2, and what was 3?
Crazy.
Asylum at 3, but that was a strong contender against Elder, which I like the original, the way the record company made him do it. I don't like the remaster.
Elder again. Jeez, Louise.
Elder's popping up. Thank you, John. That's just incredible. So he had the same 3 I had, just in a slightly different order.
I love how
went Lick It Up, Asylum, Creatures at 1.
I love how he stole change from the fountain to pay for the tax.
Yeah, and he's clearly originally from New Jersey, because I know that mall he's talking about, and I know where that fountain is. I never took change out of it, but
quick little point and Lick It Up. 9 of those songs are Vinnie Vincent co-writes, so that shows you how valuable Vinnie was at that time frame.
Well, with a lot of Lick It Up and a lot of Creatures coming up, that's also Vinnie Vincent contributions on that record too. So that just definitely supports what Vinnie brought to the band. Shocking nothing from shocking representation for Revenge or lack thereof. And what have we not heard? Have we not heard
Revenge and Animalize? That's it.
Animalize very light as well so far.
Yeah, Animalize
Chris,
isn't great though.
I loved I've Had Enough. I love
there's some good tunes, but Gene's songs on Animalize aren't as good as they are for the rest of the 80s records, I think.
Put My Log in Your Fireplace. Come on, man, that's poetry.
Eddie, how dare you?
Chris, I know you got to go, but thanks for jumping in when you could. And everybody check out Jericho's 80s Kiss cover band, Quarantine, and everything else he's got going on. And we'll talk to you when the Fozzy single comes out, maybe.
Thanks. I'm going to listen on my way to the doctor's appointment. And if I hear anything, I'm going to call in and read you out.
कैसे भूल पैबू जान बगिया तलैया हो अचके में आके तू पकड़ल हमर बहिया हो कैसे